Yeah, so I want to welcome you all to one of our many webinar series, having discussions and talking about mushrooms and fungi and all the interconnected wonderful things. This evening presentation and discussions sponsored by the Cornell Small Farms Program. We have a website at cornellmushrooms.org where you can find a lot of good resources to connect you with all things mushroom and cultivation. Our focus is on cultivation for all scales. And so our website, which again, cornellmushrooms.org, or just Google Cornell and mushrooms, has a lot of resources to connect you with folks and different enterprises and efforts in the mushroom community. We post on our events page the webinars that we've previously hosted here, so you can check those out. So after tonight, this will be posted on the events page. You can also find it on the Small Farms YouTube channel. Usually if you search Cornell Small Farms, you'll find the recordings. We have a lot of back recordings, wonderful folks sharing all sorts of different aspects of mushroom and fungi work in the world. So I encourage you to check that out. This series is part of a three-part webinar series focused on community and fungi and the intersection of people and mushrooms. We had a wonderful webinar in July with Mario Ceballos and POC fungi, which you can find again in our archives. We're going to talk tonight with Doug and a bit about his book and background, and then some of the folks who were featured in the book. And then in September, I just want to preface, we'll have a conversation about increasing access to mushroom cultivation. So I'm looking forward to that at the end of September. So those are kind of the housekeeping things. Otherwise, just ask that folks keep yourselves muted and your video off if you're a participant. There'll be plenty of opportunity to ask questions, and if things pop up in your brain and you want to put them into the chat box, you can do that anytime, and you can find that chat box. Usually there's a black toolbar, however you're accessing this webinar, and if the chat button is not in that toolbar, then look under the more menu, and you can add a chat in there. And we'd love to, in the meantime, if you want to say hello and where you're tuning in from, feel free to do that as well. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Doug, who's going to get us rolling here with some images and just set the stage for this discussion tonight. So thanks for being here, everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I want to thank Mercedes and Olga and Val for being here as well. I'm super excited to chat with you all about these mycological topics. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit here. I'm Doug Bierend. I'm a freelance writer, recently a first-time author with my book In Search of Mycotopia, which attempts to give an impression of, because there's no way to fully document this emerging community around mycology and fungi and how it looks to broader social, ecological questions and issues. And it gets to be much bigger than just about mushrooms. So just to sort of set a tone for our conversation, I thought I would share an excerpt of the book along with some pictures that I took in the process of reporting the book. So I'm just going to make sure this works because I have been fooled by Keynote before. So please tell me if this looks okay. Can I get a thumbs up? Is that working? All right.
Yep.
Off to a good start here. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Here we go. So, despite their low profile and the ignoble esteem in which many hold them, fungi are largely responsible for life as we know it. In fact, any picture of a healthy, functioning ecosystem is incomplete if not riven with fungi. Their roles as decomposers and nutrient circulators are critical to the formation and regeneration of soils. They form close relationships with the vast majority of leafy plants, often bonding with and weaving within them at the root level to create living networks that give structure to soil, scaffold against erosion, digest pathogens and toxins, and churn carbon into the wider food web. Fungi are constantly devising and secreting enzymes that can break down potential nutrition or fend off microbial competition and produce compounds that feed, intoxicate, or sometimes kill the animals that eat their reproductive organs, which we call mushrooms. All these capacities, among many other still more surprising fungal abilities, underpin the emerging field of applied mycology. Mycelia can be trained to consume hydrocarbons or kickstart the trophic cycles that build biodiversity in soils. They're put to work filtering harmful microorganisms from water, such as E. coli, and are the basis of a growing field of mycomaterials, increasingly common in textiles, construction, and shipping. Low-cost mushroom farms can be set up within a matter of weeks and in a wide variety of environments, leading many to see fungi as potential allies in struggles for food security and medicinal sovereignty. There's promising therapeutic potential as well in the fact that if you eat the right one, ideally under the right conditions and with the right people, mushrooms may deliver a life-changing shift in consciousness. Eat the wrong ones, of course, and you might get sick or even die. Though on the whole, there are far fewer deadly mushrooms than one might think. Estimates are that about 3% of named mushrooms can kill. Nevertheless, parasitic and pathogenic species of fungi can be a scourge to bodies and ecologies alike, a likely reason for the strain of mycophobia common throughout North America. Whether helpful, harmful, or benign, one thing is certain: fungi deserve our respect. Given their ubiquity and utility, it's little wonder fungi have played significant roles in human culture for millennia. Many will think immediately about the mind-altering variety and the attendant stereotypes of long hair, open-toed sandals, and Grateful Dead t-shirts. This certainly describes a section of North American mycoculture, but age-old spiritual and medicinal traditions in South and Central America, Europe, Africa, and Asia are believed by ethnomycologists to have been influenced by mushrooms' psychoactive qualities. In China, thousands of years of medicinal and culinary mushroom traditions carry on at truly massive scale. In Eastern Europe, foraging for mushrooms is a part of everyday life, such as in Russia, where, according to translator Julia Shelkonova, quote, "Calling yourself a mushroom hunter is like calling yourself a pizza eater. You just do it." In North American culture, our relationship with fungi is comparatively lacking. Indeed, mushrooms are objects of disdain and disgust among many in the Western world. Much of the emerging work around fungi in the United States is about nudging society to be more mycophilic, and the trend lines certainly seem to be pointing in that direction. Mushrooms are quickly gaining popularity, while a broad, diverse, and growing movement is enthusiastically elevating their aesthetic, culinary, medicinal, economic, and even heuristic and metaphorical value of fungi. Many devotees meet at increasingly common fungi festivals, convergences, and gatherings popping up around the country. The internet has quite naturally become a vibrant dimension of this mycological renaissance. It serves as the basis of new market opportunities, while hundreds of highly active and growing Facebook groups, Instagram pages, websites, and other forums reify the network of fungi-fascinated communities spreading around the globe. In North America, much of the online conversation revolves around foraging, identification, and a thriving DIY cultivation community. People are launching small culinary mushroom businesses that quickly grow into sizable operations, while others make fungi-infused tinctures, coffees, chocolates, and other products to sell among their community. They teach classes and organize community events. They trade strains and cultivation techniques, or tech, a term that counts among numerous cultural and practical inheritances from the psychedelic community. Within this expanding circuit of fungus-focused skills sharing and knowledge exchange, a certain subversive strain of subculture is also emerging, one that takes up fungi as part of an effort to dissolve the petrified stumps of patriarchy and colonialism and establish in their place priorities of biocentrism and universal enfranchisement in science, food, and medicine. That doesn't characterize everybody's involvement. Some people, after all, just like mushrooms a whole lot or see a good opportunity to make money. But as I've learned, there exists a real movement to educate people about fungi, and in so doing, draw meaningful social value from them, exemplified by the mycelium underground, which is introduced earlier in the book, along with other groups with such names as Radical Mycology, Female and Fungi, POC Fungi Community, Fungi for the People, and Decolonize Mycology. Citizen science is also at the core of these efforts. Despite being a relatively new division within the natural sciences, mycology still embodies many of the same institutional proclivities as the sciences in general. The academic study of fungi at universities and museums tends to focus on their genetic diversity and distribution around the globe, how they factor into soil health and ecology, and quite often emphasizing the threats they pose to timber, agriculture, and other industries. At the same time, besides the expanding market for cultivated mushrooms and their derived products, mycology offers little in the way of professional opportunities. It's little surprise then that some of the most interesting and vital happenings in mycology are taking place outside of traditional institutions. Consistent with its marginal status, mycology has always been connected to, and in fact sprang from, communities of dedicated enthusiasts. Universities are increasingly partnering with robust amateur clubs, members of which often have knowledge and expertise that are every bit as comprehensive and refined as that of anyone in academia. Those communities are increasingly diverse as well, a trend driven largely, it seems, by greater access to technology and knowledge enhanced by the culture-making capacity of the internet. There's reason to hope that this dynamic will help shape the future of mycology and perhaps the natural sciences more broadly to become more diverse and inclusive. Beyond science, there's also hope among some that the rising profile of mushrooms can help change the face of society itself, as fungi underscore the immutable interdependence of all living things. Among some traditionally marginalized areas of society too, there is deliberate work to channel the message of mushrooms in efforts at building solidarity and resilience around food and medicine, exercising agency in the face of oppressive and often racist state power, and even confronting assumptions about gender and other binaries. At the same time, the many new economic opportunities opening up around fungi create pressing questions about who stands to benefit. Whatever its outcome, the shape and direction of this growing sense of fungal possibilities may be largely determined, like fungi themselves, by its leading edges. The emerging mycological community is directly inspired by these organisms' capacity to renew soils and remediate contaminated landscapes, to provide sustainable sustenance, and in their very ways of being, to demonstrate how we might operate in more equitable, reciprocal accord with nature and one another. In other words, fungi may not be fringe, but rather a vibrant front in our collective struggle to realize a better world. And here's hoping. So that's all I've got to start us off, and I'm super excited to hear from everyone else now. I will pass the mic back to Steve, who can maybe move us to the next phase here. Thank you all.
Well, thank you for that. I want to welcome our group here for our discussion. And I saw Asha was saying the sound was a little low for them. And so let us know if the audio is not working well. Sometimes it's near your microphone on Zoom. You can sometimes adjust the settings. Sometimes that's also something you can do on your device itself. So hopefully that works for everybody. Yeah, I want to do a round robin and just encourage everybody in the group here to say hello, introduce yourself, what are projects or fungal work you're engaged with, and how you describe your relationship to fungi at this time. And I'm gonna choose Mercedes first because I see your face. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm Mercedes Perez Whitman. My pronouns are they, them, and she, her. I have an LLC called MycoSprings based in so-called Colorado Springs, Colorado. Right now, my focus is on building up my native strain bank, doing different educational workshops, and mushroom bed installations for clients in their gardens or whatever space that they have. And also using spent spawn blocks for producing mushrooms and also a lot of soil building and kind of finding other ways to incorporate fungi into my work as a landscaper. I'm also board member and newsletter co-editor of the Pikes Peak Mycological Society. And my relationship with fungi is pretty all-encompassing. It's really altered my understanding of myself as a hypha and my social surroundings as a ever-expanding mycelial web.
Awesome. Thanks. Val, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. My name is Val Nguyen. I am with Fungi for the People out of Oregon, Southern Oregon. Fungi for the People is a mushroom cultivation and research organization founded by my partner, Jay Schindler, about 12 years ago. And I've been with Fungi for the People about 5 years as mostly doing the background work, but slowly coming to the foreground, you know, how the cycles come and go. And I'm very happy to be here and very grateful for you, Doug, for weaving us together, and Steve for holding this space for emerging and ongoing mushroom community educators. My relationship to fungi, I would say, is more something akin to a friend or a guide or even a medium, you know, something having to do with moving both ways. You know, I'm definitely learning much more about fungi every day. It's just through the seasons, it's an apprenticeship, and from elders as well as children. Everybody has a perspective that is just very fruitful in observing small things like fungi that are just really catch you by the surprise. And I guess I have been channeling fungi for the people as the course coordinator, mostly responding to people's interests and needs related to fungi. I actually came as a student of Fungi for the People and saw, really for the first time in my life, I'm originally from Southern California, so LA, big thrum of the city, and feeling very disassociated from my environment. I'm a multiracial individual with origins from Southeast Asia and also from Europe. And so a lot of very interesting background and very recent migration that left a lot of questions in my head and in my heart. And honestly, the first time I ever found a sense of community was within the fungi community. It's just, there's a sense of humbleness and of love for the earth and of lack of fear, honestly, of change, and actually a fascination with the environment, and coupled with a kind of I guess a culinary aspect within fungi. People really are eager to nourish their communities and eager to experiment with all the metabolites and all of the different forms that fungi can lend themselves to medicinal preparations. I just felt myself immediately at home in the first workshop that I took with Jay, and I'm here. And so I feel like there's so much that can be given through the education offered by fungi, through the partnerships, and not only being there as a teacher, but being there as a participant. And I love to be part of this culture. And I guess projects I've been working on, we're still doing our courses, and that's always changing. I'm also working on kind of an interesting study that is related to a very controversial named mountain, and seeing if I guess the group of citizen scientists and scientists themselves can kind of invoke their citizenry and their sense of place to uplift this mountain named Swastika Mountain. in Southern Oregon, and uplift it into something that can be transmuted into a place name and a better relationship. So kind of seeing the potential of social gatherings like the New Moon Mycology Summit and the POC fungi community, really uplifting these kind of biology-centered and nature-centered gatherings to really focus in on land-based changes and changes with the way that we relate to land. And that's why I'm here for it. I'm here to be a friend of the fungi and a witness to these changes. And there's a lot of hope in that. And that's it. I talk too much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Hi, Olga. Do you want to say hello? Share a bit about your relationship.
Yes, thank you everyone for sharing. Can everyone hear me okay? Great, great. Yeah, so much I resonate with everyone's experiences and love affair that they have with fungi, and yeah, relationship with fungi my relationship has changed over the years, but it's still this ever growing fascination. And I'm very it's hard to keep my attention sometimes. And I think that fungi definitely still capture me in so many ways. And especially when we're outside and going on walks and seeing what's out there is really great, because it is like new every time and you're learning more. And even within cultivation and stuff like that. But I guess to bring it back, because I guess maybe y'all are wondering who I am. I didn't really tell y'all, but yeah, my name is Olga Tzogas, and I'm here in the Great Lakes bioregion in the southern shores of Lake Ontario and Rochester, New York, traditional Haudenosaunee territory. And I run a mushroom farm and and company type of thing called Smugtown Mushrooms. And I also organize mycological, myco and biocentric events with a group of people called the Mycelium Underground. And we have put together some events through the past few years called the New Moon Mycology Summit. And that is definitely more like my passion project and my love affair, and where I would where I like to put a lot of my energy, even though it's not necessarily monetarily beneficial. But yeah, just bringing people together for the love of fungi, for the love of ecological and social justice, for racial justice. So we can have discussions, have places where we can have discussions about how land is, it's about everything. And that's where the struggle is, and bringing that discussion, back to the table. And definitely grateful for so many people, so many teachers, fungi for the people. I've learned so much from over the years, and I'm very excited that they're here today, and grateful for you, Steve, for Mercedes and Doug. And it's been, something that I feel like fungi has brought forth this community that I can't necessarily find in my hometown or where I do live. And I feel almost like my strongest network of people are scattered like spores across the country, the continent, and the world. And really there's this common thread that we love fungi, and we want to keep learning more and building a better world than something that we've been born into. So yeah, that's it.
Beautiful.
And much more.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I'll just say briefly that I'm really grateful. I'm coming from where Cornell University is sitting on Haudenosaunee or Goyankono Cayuga lands, and have been lucky to find myself working in sort of an intersection of research and education, and also having a farm with my wife and family where we grow mushrooms and interact with them. And one of the things I'm thinking about when I hear everyone's reflections is just in terms of relationship is how my background and really study for my life has been in the forest and with trees, and it took a while to bring fungi into that. It was like a late arrival, but it was such an important piece that was missing. And there's so many places I can think of in my mind where I know different fungi show up at different times. It's not every year, it's not every time, same time of every year, but it invites me and draws me and drives me to visit special places around our farm, around the forests that we're blessed to be close by, and to just explore and connect and wonder if we're gonna find a friend out there in the forest. And so for me, the fungi really ground me in that connection, that relationship. And then as I look to the fungi, I think about the trees and the forests that are connected to that, and all the changes that happen on time scales that are much longer than our human life cycles and animal life cycles, that are happening in centuries and multiple generations. And so fungi connect us into something, I think, much bigger than ourselves, and hopefully we're paying something forward into the future. And last year was like an incredible droughty, dry year, as we seem to be in this part of the world in New York, as in many parts of the world, sort of flip-flopping between different scenarios. So driest ever, wettest ever, and kind of back and forth. And so my son was born last year during the pandemic, and we only found 2 mushrooms that year, wild out in the woods, and they were on the same beautiful old massive oak, decaying oak stump on our farm. And we found a chicken of the woods, and we found a maitake, and he got the chance to harvest for the first time and connect to that, and it was really beautiful. So I'm just grateful for the constant reminder of fungi to bring us back to that deep connection to place and time, and a unique time every time we make a new discovery or a new connection. So, and here we are doing that again. So I want to encourage folks participating, if you have questions for us collectively, to put those in the chat. But I have a question to keep us rolling here, and I'd love to think about sort of the intersection of fungi and people. And I'd love for everyone in the group here to think about a story, a short story to share about a time when you saw a human and a fungi interact that inspired you, and to think about what you learned from that engagement of a person or people and a mushroom or a fungus. And I'll just leave it open to anyone when that spark hits to share a little bit of a story about what that looked like.
I might kick this one off just because I feel like it's also an opportunity to sort of shore up my own answer to the last question, which involves Olga as well, because Olga was my introduction to all of this in a big way. I was originally writing about technology and media, and had thought I might find some signs of hope in that field, and quickly became disillusioned with it. And through a series of strange life events, found myself talking to people who were stewarding land and growing food, and found myself with an opportunity to start writing about that. And I had heard about this mushroom stuff because of a very famous kind of myco evangelist named Paul Stamets. I had seen like his TED talk, and it appealed to me on like a technological level because he was talking about like the Wood Wide Web. And so I ended up interviewing him for a tech website of all things. And that was the sport of the idea, or of the relationship for me. And when I started writing about food, I had heard about this mushroom farm in Rochester that was run by these kind of radical folks who were kind of bumping up against the capitalist requirements of running a business, despite having a very different set of values. And so I went up there and spent a couple of days with Olga at Smugtown, and I saw people cultivating mushrooms for the first time, which, just as a sight and a sensory experience, the smells of it, and the environment. That was a pretty striking experience. But then it was going out into the woods with her that just kind of cemented my place as a fungophile or as a mycophile, because we went into the woods along the shore of Lake Ontario, and since she has a deep relationship to fungi and I didn't at the time, I was shown what it's like to notice them, and I was kind of brought into awareness of them. And similar to what you were saying, Steve, it connected me instantly to thinking about the trees and to the soil, and suddenly the environment took on a new cast. Like it was in a new light for me. The mushrooms were suddenly visible, and so were their roles as we were talking along our walk, and I was learning about them. It was a sort of frame shifting experience for me. So I think my answer is something more like noticing them for the first time myself by way of seeing someone's relationship to them. And since then I've seen this pattern play out many times, because I think it's as profound as saying, like, what if we noticed plants for the first time? It's a whole kingdom of life that we're collectively kind of becoming accustomed to or aware of, and there's a lot of profound potential in that. And so I think noticing people noticing was the first step for me, and I encourage everyone else to notice as well.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Yeah, love spreading the fungal fever, glad you caught it. So, first image for me that came into my brain when we're like talking there, thinking about people that inspired us with fungi is, a mutual friend of ours and someone who is in the book is Willoughby Ravelo, who wrote DIY Mushroom Cultivation. And the first time I remember seeing Willoughby was years ago in the Pacific Northwest. And, he was really knowledgeable about wild ID and stuff, but then it wasn't until like a talent show that he was using a microphone made out of Fomes fomitarius, which is the tinder conch. And yeah, I think he did the sex life of fungi there, but I'm not entirely sure. But then, years later, he was using like a giant, gorgeous Ganoderma, which is a reishi species that he found also in the Pacific Northwest, and that he put electronic, like just basically he made like a soundboard with it, so I just, there's just so much brilliance inside people, and it's really inspiring to see people just use fungi in so many different forms. So yeah, check out Willoughby, he's the best.
I can go next. The first thing that came to my mind was a more recent experience that I had a couple months ago, where my business partner, Anna Wormuth, and I were co-teaching a little mushroom bed workshop, or bed installation workshop, and also did like a little foray just around at this farm camp, this week-long farm camp at this urban farm called Flying Pig Farm in Manitou Springs, just next to our town. And we're with kids, I think, I want to say as young as like 6 to some point in middle school. And we had, like 3 different rounds of kids coming in to help do this installation. And some kids were really into it. And some were pretty grossed out, at least initially, by these mushroom spawn blocks. But we're definitely very intrigued also by the fact that these, white blocks were producing oyster mushrooms. And I was wearing this Mushrooms Are People Too shirt. I'm sorry to say that I don't remember who made those. But some kids started to say that, and I heard later that throughout the week, kids were kind of saying that phrase here and there, and that really warmed my heart. And it was also really just like inspiring that kids, whether this was their first time being exposed to something like this or not, shared generally some sort of enthusiasm or interest and in what we are doing. And I personally did not even really think about mushrooms at that age. So it just felt really awesome to connect with kids like that and hopefully inspire them.
I'm happy to chime in a little bit. Honestly, all the humans that have ever, brought a mushroom to my attention or walked along the forest with me, or anybody that is involved in the mycological world, I feel like has had such an indelible imprint. Everybody interprets the mushroom world in such a different way, and between the folks that I've met in the courses and in Olga's New Moon Symposium, and then Mario's POC fungi community, it's just so hard to choose just one, because just the inspiration is so strong. We have people in our courses, for example, that just suddenly light up and say, oh, I'm a computer scientist, and I wonder if my psyllium will be able to uptake certain metals that increase the transference of energy of the conductivity. And just there's so much that clicks within everybody's head in their respective positions that it's really hard to pinpoint a person specifically. But I think what really came up in my mind at the very beginning was my experience with my own grandfather, who the very first time I had met him, we didn't speak the same language, and he was a very intimidating person. And this was in Belgium, and very scary person, for a 5-year-old child who doesn't really speak much French, and we just really impacted me how glacial he was. And I remember even from back then, he's like, I'm a man who holds no dogma, very much of a nihilist, or somebody that believes in nothing really, and is very sarcastic about the future, and sensitive to the pitfalls of humanity. But so I was very afraid of this kind of very bristling person that was just so full of bitterness and judgment towards the world. But one day he said, okay, let's go out to the woods. And I was like, wow, okay, sure. Here I am, very shy. And we go out, and these woods by the train tracks. And he says, oh, now Valerie, I want you to smell the smell of the earth. It's been raining the last 3 days, right? And this is, very young me. He's like, okay, notice these trees here. It's like, okay, we're going to be looking at the foot of these trees, and just, I will actually never forget the way that I was introduced to ecology was through mushrooms, and the way that I was attuned to my greater environment was just through being aware of just the symphony of the elements. And the first time ever harvesting something from the land, like you'll never forget a person who teaches you how to have this multisensory experience and relationship to fungi. So the very first thing that I ever picked and ate from the land was a mushroom. And I really think if everybody can have you can be that person for someone else to or if everybody can have at a young age, someone that walks with them through the land and opens up their awareness to a very multi-sensory awareness. There's so much, a beauty in that, and there's so much connection that despite, whatever tensions or nihilism or judgment we might have of the future of humanity, there's this essential connectedness that is just so humbling, and that you carry on for years and years and years, transculturally, across the oceans. And, when you're by yourself, you will have that resource to dip into, and these friends in the forest to learn from. Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. So turning our attention to this larger dispersed sporulating community that's across the country, across the world, across many different places. The question I have for you all in your experience and connections is thinking about how the collective movement can continue to strengthen and ensure that access to knowledge, to mushroom strains, to materials, to cultivation, all those different aspects, how does that remain open and decentralized? How do we continue to cultivate a community that allows, I think, some of the types of ideas that Doug conveyed in the book to flourish? And what is the work that needs to be done in order to accomplish that?
I might, again, just step in here as my own kind of, just to hopefully give my own frame on it, because I come at this, by the way, as very much an outsider, and I'm very excited that we have this representative group here of the entire continental US in terms of being in New York, being in Colorado, being in Oregon, so people who can attest to the widespread nature of this network. And we all kind of know what we're talking about with one another, even if an outsider listening in wouldn't have any sense of like what we're talking about, with like spreading spores and being part of a mycelial network and things. But those of us who have connected to it, and certainly the people who are carrying it forward, know it to be very real. And for me, the just observing it and to some extent taking part in it, it seems to have a set of values kind of baked in, or that emerge from the subject of the community, which is fungi and all that fungi connect to, which is all living things in essence. And so the term biocentrism comes up a lot, and it feels like there is a natural set of values and a sense of kinship with these beings. You may have caught wind of that attitude and things we've heard already in this conversation. And I feel like those forces are, and those impulses that kind of come with fungal fellowship, or noticing fungi and through them the greater ecological web that we're all entangled with, is what has kept this character. There are differences obviously between these groups depending on where you go, and it's people are all myriad types and attitudes and outlooks, but like I mentioned in my introduction, and as I just said, there are consistencies, and I feel like it is something about fungi themselves and the lessons we learn by studying ecology through them that encourage these values. And so I feel like as long as that is kept central, the community will grow, and and the knowledge will and the skills and the value will percolate throughout the network. But those values are really the values of biocentrism, sustainability, of inclusiveness and non-judgment toward any form of identity, human or otherwise. These sorts of things I feel like are really what I see as part of the heart of this movement and this set of communities.
Yeah, Doug, I very much agree with all of that. I think also it's just so important to continue to build safer spaces for learning and sharing knowledge. And that includes, when foraging, to doing lab work, to attending, different mycological meetings. The more established or kind of predominant mycological world is very cis heteronormative and patriarchal. And I've personally really struggled to find a good mentorship locally. And I'm so grateful for the gatherings I've attended, like New Moon, that have connected me with so many people who share a more similar worldview as me, respect me a lot more, and care about these intersections of mycology and varying justice issues. And yeah, I think trying to, cultivate these safer spaces where you are can be certainly challenging, but I feel very committed to that.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this?
I guess actually I kind of have a couple of things to add, if that's okay.
Please.
I'm also thinking about some people who have made like huge impacts on access to mushroom cultivation, like William Padilla Brown, like who's very big on keeping his research open source, and like even basically giving away his last book for donation by putting it up as a PDF. And that, in comparison with some bigger names out there that have, and a number of older white men involved in mycology who have perhaps patented some of their work, and not really prioritized accessibility in their work. It makes me feel hopeful about younger generations of people involved in mycology, and is also very inspiring, that kind of generosity. I'm very, very appreciative of that.
I just wanted to pin one more thought onto that, because it reminded me another thing about all of this that and it occurred to me during my trip to the woods with Olga too, was this notion of abundance versus scarcity kind of mindsets that fungi seem to help bring us to. The idea that walking into the woods could mean coming home with dinner, but it certainly will mean encountering interesting beings that you may never have met before or thought about before. And yeah, I feel like that might also connect to the values side of things that I was talking about. It also occurred to me while you were saying that education is such a big part of this as well. Like, I feel like some of the big names have the purchase they do because they're the first people that so many hear about fungi from. And so the fact that there may be a farmer's market now where someone who hasn't thought about or encountered fungi can hear about them, and maybe from a person with these values that we're talking about and these outlooks that we're talking about, instead of like, here's fungi and here's a whole set of products that come along with knowing about fungi, and now you can start to work with the home. Instead, it's here's a community that you might plug into, and here's a worldview that you might consider. So I just was inspired to kind of add that by what you were saying.
Hi, this is David Wells from Nashville, Tennessee. If I may just make a comment. I'm at my mushroom facility. I was just shaking bags, listening to you guys, and was inspired by this conversation, and how, the question being like, how can we make this subject of mycological education continued? And I think one simple thing that came to mind was just to continue to plant trees. you know, there's a tremendous amount of natural resources in the Southeast where I am. Mainly the hardwoods that are being cut down for fuel for Europe. And there's a great Wall Street Journal article about this. I mean, there's so many hardwoods that are being cut down now to be turned into fuel pellets, which of course is what we actually use as a substrate material. And, you know, as we're fighting climate change and talking about growing mushrooms, I continue to question like how secure are supply chains and natural resources moving forward. And being in the center of mycology and just seeing all this spent substrate around me that's turning into amazing compost, you know, can we create circular economies with all of our businesses and continue this cycle ourselves in one form or fashion? So I just wanted to add that, and thank you guys.
Thank you. I know that all three of you have thoughts on this probably. I know Mercedes, that describes a lot of what you do in your work, right? You were using spent substrate blocks as part of your landscaping business.
Yeah, I think like closing loops in our waste streams is there's such a huge opportunity for that. I've only really kind of scratched the surface and hope to develop a more like regular system of like collecting both, you know, spawn blocks. There's a local mushroom company in my town that produces so many mushrooms indoors that put the spent blocks, you know, after 1 or 2 flushes in a dumpster, and it's free game after that. And there's also, yeah, like in this more urban environment that I'm in, there are a ton of coffee shops and breweries. I live in Colorado where there's, you know, a lot of hemp and cannabis production, and there's, you know, opportunity to harvest waste from that. And it just makes so much sense on many different levels in terms of, you know, the fact that there are these byproducts that are considered waste that are literally going into a landfill oftentimes, which have so much potential to be utilized in these different ways. And then it saves a lot of time, just like, you know, getting a spawn block that hasn't been contaminated yet and is still totally viable, just is quite sensical especially when, you know, still myself operating within this very capitalistic framework every day of, you know, I have a pretty full-time job, and I really like trying to incorporate that the world of fungi into my job as much as possible as a landscaper. And I think I was gonna say something else, but I think that's good.
Val or Olga, do you have any thoughts on this?
Sure. Yeah, there's so many ways that people can be involved at every stage, from like leading nature walks or like kind of micro-social gatherings, like where you just go out into the woods or go into the park and just commit an hour to, you know, once a month. If you don't have a mycological club, you know, you can start one, but invite the people that are interested in your community to just walk around and observe what's going on. And you know, once a month, notice. If you do it across, you know, a couple of years, you start to become more attuned to the natural cycles and to, you know, the drought and the flooding of the earth and all these different things that we tend to be a little bit more isolated from, with just the conveniences that we surround ourselves. But, you know, we are in a very, very vulnerable time of or human time. And I feel like just being exposed to just these cycles is just much more, it's a very intimate experience, and it just makes you much more aware of you know, what's happening in the world beyond your home. And yeah, creating as many opportunities for access as possible, but not only you know, access for the sake of diversity, but access truly to welcome in new energy, and the possibility for different perspectives, because, you know, fungi farming is, and, you know, the fungal world, like everything is not immune to the challenges of you know, of today. So like plastics is a big issue. You know, how are we going to transcend this this very convenient you know, medium of keeping things sheltered in coming into the, you know, the century, this later part of the century. You know, it is, you know, we're kind of post-industrialism, where things are really definitely starting to decline, and we're having a hard time dealing with all of the wastes that are a consequence of this easy access to petroleum products. So getting as many people into it so we can help solve these problems, so that, you know, all the solutions that are really offered by the fungal world can offer more in a broad sense. So, you know, like fungi can definitely help in nutrient cycling and sequestering carbon, and, you know, they really upend you know, your kind of appreciation of like a clean lawn. Like, I really appreciate that Mercedes is talking about and putting micro blocks back into the soil, because, you know, now you're increasing the soil porosity, and you know, really closing that beautiful waste stream. And if we could figure out a way to transcend plastics, and that would be amazing. But the simplest way actually would be to just be more local and have smaller scale farms. And you know, that opens you to be exploring different vessels, such as in glass or in reusable, you know, polypropylene containers or clay or something like that. But yeah, the mycological world can be as small and as big as you want it to be. And I think starting small by just going out into the woods with your friends, and then increasing that to a more social activity, I think is a very, very healing activity. And maybe you'll start to grow mushrooms from the ones that you find in the woods. Like, oh, this oyster, I wonder if I can, you know, pick this bioregional oyster and put it on a little piece of cardboard, and oh, it's growing, and maybe I'm going to see if I can put it on this piece of agar or seaweed. And yeah, there's a lot of possibilities.
Yeah, I wonder if anyone can speak to the importance of like local strains and finding local fungi in the bioregion, and ways that we can help like collect and preserve that, and potentially propagate and myceliate that important genetic information, because the sort of library of genetics is a bit limited right now, right, in some ways. And so there's ways that we can tune into the spaces around us and start to pay attention and do some of that work. And I'd love for someone to share a bit about an experience where that really produced something really fruitful.
I know, Olga, you work with local strains a lot. And in fact, that was a point in the book that your reishi, your kind of prize-winning reishi, came from a park near you, I think, if I remember correctly.
That is the nicest reishi we've ever grown. It is amazing. It tastes like gingerbreads.
Oh, Olga, I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm
There
back.
we
Can
are.
y'all hear me?
Yeah, hey there.
Oh, hold on one second. going on? Can you hear me? No?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm like, what's going on? Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. You just never know what's going to be out there. You could capture and work with a species that could be a robust producer and tasty friend. And you could also be finding like, certain species that are growing in toxic waste dumps where you can potentially, visualize that, wow, I know that this brownfield has, don't know where we are. Yeah, so you could find a mushroom growing in a toxic brownfield. You can find that mushroom, bring it home. That could then be used to maybe clean up soils in the future. So it's really, yeah, it's inspirational what could happen. And I know, tons of us mushroom cultivators, sometimes we will find something that, could be, we think that is super, gorgeous in the wild, it's fruiting well in the wild, but then, we bring it home and start to work with it and it doesn't work that great. So it's a hit or miss. Asha has a question, I think, though, about the mushrooms in the toxic dump. I saw.
They ask if mushrooms from toxic dumps are safe. And I think what you're describing is more
Doug,
like,
I think you're muted, maybe, or I can't hear you.
oh, can anyone else hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Doug.
Oh, okay. Well, not to speak for Olga, but I think that she was talking about mushrooms growing in brownfields as a sign that the mushroom can withstand those conditions, toxic conditions, and is maybe processing heavy metals or some other contaminant in a way that that is, maybe indicates that they could be helpful in remediating contaminated landscapes. And also, I just, now that I'm talking, I wanted to mention too that I was having a conversation just the other day with Olga and someone else about how mushrooms as a crop, especially specialty mushrooms, like most people will cultivate at home because most people aren't going to be cultivating button mushrooms. That's a secured industry essentially, and the economics don't favor someone doing that in their garage. But the mushrooms like oyster mushrooms and shiitake and the specialty class, they are sort of biased toward local markets because they don't have the best shelf life. And so it's another example, and it's an interesting one to me, of how mushrooms sort of suggest a model just in their ways of being that is more local and is more focused on region.
Yeah, I'd also love to add that especially in Colorado, I think there's this association. Like people generally don't associate Colorado and the high desert and like plains with mushrooms. Meanwhile, actually, Colorado is an incredibly diverse population of different kinds of mushrooms and other fungi. I think this really this attitude is very much like rooted in settler colonialist thought and this like inaccurate understanding of the desert and plains and as them being like hostile and like desolate. And I think, and some people are like astounded that I can grow mushrooms, a number of different varieties of mushrooms outside, from like local strains of oysters to Queen Schifferia, which is, climate relevant. It's not from the US, but I really think that there's value in working with it. As long as it's because it's not invasive. That would be kind of a different story. But like Hericium coralloides, which grows locally here. And And I think that starting with, what's attainable locally, like what grows here locally, what is like saprophytic that can be cultivated here, and not trying to, there are a number of people who have approached me saying like, oh, I inoculated my logs with shiitake mycelium and it's not working. And it's like, well, if you're doing that outside or in this, drier climate at higher elevation and everything, it's not it's not going to be very effective because the climate is not conducive to what shiitakes need. And so yeah, like coming at things with this more local approach makes all kinds of sense. And I really like the focus of native strains also, because it's a way, I think, of kind of giving back to to the forest in which you're foraging from, and by propagating more of that in your biosphere. And yeah, I just think that's really important, and kind of, as others have highlighted, informs is kind of part of a larger mycological understanding that can also coincide with a larger like food movement or medicine movement and social movements, etc.
And I'd also add that I think we just need to try a lot of different things, because mushrooms are incredibly adaptive and willing to challenge their environment and find ways to make it work. And, I think we're playing with sort of the balance of what we have in terms of a biodiversity right now, which is like things that show up in our local environment, things that come in from other places. And I think there's a lot of problematic language around like, well, this belongs here, this doesn't, right? And we're sort of in a space right now where everything belongs everywhere and there's opportunity. And I always encourage folks when they're taking classes to try something. I don't want them to not try to inoculate a log because a book or something we wrote says it doesn't work, because we never know what's going to happen. And I think our continuing willingness to experiment is what led to the phenomenon that in certain climates, shiitakes do grow well, and you can soak a log and it has an incredible consistency in terms of its production. That didn't just happen. I think that was a human relationship that evolved over a long time. And so the ways that we can experiment and try things and not say, well, that didn't work, so I'm done. I think we're very attached to like success or failure. And I think that for me, the relationship to fungi has been always to encourage with experimentation. So always trying something new and seeing what's possible. So when I think about, we might be growing oysters here in New York on straw because that's a really easy thing to find, but in other parts of the world or other parts of the country, that's a really scarce resource. What is the analog to straw that is locally abundant and that can be a food source, and that we might need to just work with the fungi a bit to cultivate that relationship over time. But it takes many generations of that to happen. So I want to encourage people to play and to experiment and to share, so that we can break through and find new things as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I also, want to say I don't want to dissuade people from experimenting with shiitakes or other mushrooms for sure. And, building, also experimenting with forming different microclimates, even when outdoors, can be really effective. I think it's just been a bummer when people have tried something that's pretty difficult given where we are, and been then persuaded to even participate even further.
Yep, I agree. No, I agree. And I think when you get started, it's really good to have some like easy successes. So you can celebrate those and then experiment. Totally. Yeah, it's all a balance. Yeah, thanks for that. Cool. I want to potentially like encourage any comments or questions in the chat. If folks are thinking about things that this conversation is bringing up, please chime in the chat box. And otherwise, you know, I think we can sort of start to tie up this bundle of conversation, which is putting a lot out there. Hopefully, good food for thought for people to think about and chew on. And I started out with that question about relationship because I think ultimately what I'm inspired by is learning from people's different relationships to fungi and how they're thinking about it, how they're encouraged to build relationship and evolve that relationship. And it's a living, breathing thing. So in that realm, I want to ask the group here assembled, when you think about the larger community, like what open niches are there? If we think about an ecosystem, there's always spaces that need more energy put towards them. And we're all busy juggling lots of different things. And if we could imagine a magic helper arriving and supporting something, like what is an open niche in the community that needs some attention, that someone listening to this might be like, oh, that's an interesting thing for me to check out and to dive into?
That's a good question and a difficult one, I think, because it is so full of points of entry as a subject and as an area of activity. Like there's so many ways that people could become involved and contribute. And I think that's part of the, you know, just speaking for myself and the book that I wrote about, you know, this stuff, it to me was largely a message of like anyone can contribute. And part of the reason for that is, and maybe the main reason is, because there's so much that we don't know, and it's something that we're all learning about. And like you were just conversing about, you know, there's so much to be learned just by trying stuff out. And so there's really no telling when someone might make a discovery about some potential capacity that fungi have, or some method of cultivation. You know, William Padilla Brown was brought up earlier, and he's part of a community of people that have like kind of cracked the code of cultivating cordyceps mushrooms, which is a very potent and valuable medicinal. And so that's opened up like a domestic market for this mushroom that's usually imported or produced in mass scales, questionable quality, you know. So there's a lot of potential, and it's part of what's so exciting about it. And just to sort of like tie in the values side of things too, you know, I've been seeing kind of questions about like, can we maybe save rainforests that are being felled for, you know, palm oil by cultivating mushrooms instead? And that may be the case, but to me it triggered this thought that like one of the things I kind of wanted to push back against with the book was this sort of solutionism mindset, and the idea that like mushrooms are going to save the world for us or on our behalf, and rather that like, while we may find out that, hey, there isn't a mushroom that can help us remediate this oil spill or, you know, replace this packing material, and that's wonderful, and I fully encourage that, I feel like the more useful and the more exciting thing about fungi is how they are inspiring people to come together in ways that uplift these values that we're talking about, that center marginalized people, that and the earth and its ecosystems, and I should say our ecosystems and ecologies, we're all part of it, and it underlines the fact that we're all connected to it, and that the self is maybe a misnomer in that context and all of that. So I guess if I had an answer to that question, it would be something along the lines of like, follow this wherever it takes you. You know, always take the next step with it, and you may end up, you know, with a business at the end of that that's doing good for your community. You may end up writing a book, which is where it took me very unexpectedly. You may end up, you know, doing citizen science and really making a contribution to the understanding of fungi that, you know, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's the history of fungi too. Like we know what we know about them largely because people were just curious and took the next step. So there's no telling where it leads, but I encourage everyone to take it.
I really love that answer, Doug. And I think I don't know, there are a number of ways I feel I could approach this. And I guess one thing that I'd really love to see is people who are in a more like privileged position being one, just more open to like amateur mycologists, or, you know, just people with a budding interest. And also maybe, you know, if they have money, like donating that to people trying to make things happen. And, you know, supporting people who come up with their own ideas for their own communities, and want to explore that further. Something more specific that I'm thinking about, like in my own town, is like that I'm personally interested in exploring, and think that there anywhere really where there's like a ton of mushroom spawn blocks around is like, I think that there's a huge potential for like making mushroom compost, which oftentimes people might buy at a store and it's like from pretty far away. That's just something that I've been thinking about a lot, because there's a huge resource for that, and also the materials to create a healthy compost pile for that. And yeah, I guess that's what I have to say. I feel like everything else has kind of been touched upon, so.
Thanks. Val, you have anything you want to add into this mix right now?
I kind of lost train of the question. Could you refresh that? I feel like
Sure.
I agree with everything that everybody has been saying.
Yeah, I was asking about like open niches in the fungal ecosystem,
Right.
and what spaces you see if folks want to jump in are really needed.
Absolutely, or just showing up, like Doug said, just come as you are, and you will have the perspective that's unique to you, and that'll really help add more layers to our understanding of mushroom cultivation, whether you're a carpenter or you're a chef, or you're a body worker. Like when, for example, the realm of medicinal mushrooms is so vast, like you could talk about it for hours and hours and hours, and there's still so much that is to be learned about it. But honestly, the way that you start to learn more about, for example, medicinal mushrooms, is by letting your personal experience guide you, and letting the health of your loved ones guide you. So for example, you're affected by breast cancer in your family, or issues with gout, or inflammation, and that's how your interest is going to be shaped, and how your research is going to be shaped. And I think there's this barrier that needs to be broken of like subjective versus objective, scientific research versus personal interest. I think definitely when there's something that's so unexplored as like mushrooms, your personal interest and your personal curiosity and what you can bring to the conversation, because it concerns you, is really what is going to expand the field, because there's so much unknown. And like going back to the mushroom being medicinal thing, they keep on discovering, oh, it's good for this, it's good for that, but it's just because people have chosen to investigate it in that direction. So it's it definitely in an ancient science that is also very much continuing to evolve based on our own needs, and our needs are changing in this climate, and this definitely where we're challenged with resources being further and further away and exported further and further away. What inspiration can we take from the present moment? Just really listen to where you are, and that's really going to guide you along the path of mushroom path. everybody has something to give to this conversation and to this study. That's.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate everyone's time and energy and thoughtfulness in this awesome conversation that leaves me a lot to sit with and think of. And I appreciate everyone's participation who showed up tonight and who will view this in the future online. And we'll all stay connected. So there's lots of gatherings, there's lots of opportunities to connect. If you're on our email list, I'll send a follow-up with some of the connections to these folks who were gracious enough to join us on the call tonight. So we'll have some links to connect with them. And like I said, in September, we'll convene again and talk about increasing access to mushroom cultivation as a focused conversation as well. So really want to thank everybody for their time and energy, encourage everybody to stay safe and stay connected and healthy. And we're going to sign off and conclude for tonight. So thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
I feel
much.
very lucky to be a part of this. And yeah, it's great to meet you also, Val.
You too, Mercedes. I really appreciate your perspective. Definitely. Coming from an arid area, I feel like from out east, it's so much easier to grow shiitakes and things like that. And there's so many challenges that mushrooms can adapt to. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Olga, for holding so much positive space, and Doug and Steve, for both of your amazing books that have inspired a very different approach to mushroom cultivation that's more grounded in the forest and in social cultures. And yeah.
I'm just so honored that you two and you three, Olga, unfortunately, our phone service cut out on us, but the three of you joined us. This was like a dream come true for me. So really appreciate hearing all of your perspectives and wisdom. And I look forward to seeing and meeting you all again in person sometime soon.
Yeah, and if anyone is not connected to our list and didn't get this email, you can email me at sfg53@cornell.edu, and I'll make sure to connect you into the resources and the folks that were here. So thank you all so much. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.